Hey, what is going on? I hope everybody is doing great today. This is your girl, Miss Straight Talk, no sugar added. And when I mean no sugar added, there's no sugar added. I just give it to you straight. These are my opinions, these are my experiences, and these are my beliefs. And I am just sharing a perspective with you. So today, I am coming on to share with you some information from my most recent podcast. If you have not subscribed, if you are a podcast subscriber and you have not subscribed to the Life Diet 365, I definitely encourage you to go to wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm on, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Pandora, and check me out. Podcasts only last anywhere between 9 to about 15 minutes. So check it out. So today I'm sharing with you episode 39 of my podcast, and it's titled, Is It a Curse or Is It a Habit? And I thought this was a very interesting, it's going to be one of my favorite little mini series that I do. This is just a pre introduction. Well, an introduction because it's the beginning, right? So who am I fooling? So let me just talk to you for a moment. So each week or every episode, I always read a quote. So I'm going to read to you today's quote. And the quote is, feeling sorry for yourself and your present condition is not only a waste of energy, but the worst habit you could possibly have. Dale Carnegie. And I want that to sink in for a moment, for half a second. Just kind of think about what I said. Feeling sorry for yourself and your present condition is not only a waste of energy, but it's the worst habit you could possibly have. And what I interpret that to mean is if we continuously find reasons to feel sorry for ourselves, to fall into these pits of depression, or grief, or whatever's going on in our present state of life, it's wasted energy, and it becomes a habit because you'll sit still for a moment. Have you ever noticed that you sit still for a moment and then you wonder what was the last thing you were worried about, or the last thing you were thinking about, or what you were feeling? It's a habit because it's comfortable. Habits are comfortable. So over the course of our lifetime, we'll develop some personal habits. Some are good and some are the best things for us. Like for instance, brushing our teeth every day. It's a good habit to have, right? And many of our habits, they serve us quite well. And then there are some that just don't. And so there's some like, being quick to be angry, temperamental, drinking, alcoholism, any type of addiction, gambling, being abusive to the people in your life. And those are just a few. And those things can be very detrimental to our health and detrimental to our life because they're habits that we keep going back to. And unless, we take the time to search internally to figure out what it is about this particular thing or what's going on in our life that's drawing us to this, that's giving some type of relief, it will continue to be a habit. So whether you want to believe it or not, we choose a consistent pattern of behavior. If we choose a consistent pattern of behavior, then we must understand that we invite that to become a habit. So does that make sense to you? I hope it does. So here's a quote that I'm going to read to you from Christianity.com. Now, let me just warn you, I'm not getting all deep in spirituality. I just thought this was a great quote that I wanted to share for this episode. It says, we inherit many traits and preferences from our parents that aren't always a positive influence in our lives or others. When we acquire a sinful habit or belief that negatively affects our lives or those around us, this is known as a generational curse. We've heard that before. If you've been around in the church circles long enough, you've heard the word generational curse. So put a pin right there, but don't let it hold it there. Be able to rip that down. It is the shadow side of behavior passed down through the generations, but is it possible to break this cycle of suffering? And I would conclude to some degree, yes, there is. I believe that we can break any cycle of anything. We have to put our mind to it. We have to be disciplined, and we have to be motivated. Well, we have to be motivated. We have to be disciplined, because I think you should be motivated to do something, and then discipline is what keeps you on that path. So That's that quote, and that comes from Christianity.com. So my theory on whether something is a curse or a habit, I believe that a curse is something running in your family bloodline that you may be acutely aware of. You know that it's a generational curse. Like, you know that this is something that's kind of been passed down in your family, and there's just somebody in there just always seems to pick this up. So it runs through your family bloodline that you may be acutely aware of, but because you choose to accept it at face value, you continue to perpetuate it, and then that's when it becomes a habit. So just think about some things that you may have identified that's coming through or have come through your family bloodline. I know on my husband's side of the family, he's always said, that, alcoholism was one of those things that he had seen growing up, with his father, his grandfather, uncles. So he knew that that was something he was not going to do because he saw what it did to them and how it affected the family. And so it all depends on your perspective. And I'm so big on perspective. It's like how you look at something. So you see, making a conscious decision that whatever bad juju might be going on in your bloodline, you have to make it up that it stops with me. Make it up in your mind that it stops with you, whatever it may be. And the reason it stops with me is because I choose different behaviors that will trigger better habits. And so, for my husband, for him, it was, he became more disciplined. He focused on martial arts. He went into the military. He was into comic books, and those were things that drew his interest. So whenever, there's an escape, because that's what, a bad habit is. It's an escape from something. And so those things, and I'm telling you, he read books, and so that's my encyclopedia right there. I'm telling you, because that man is so smart. So over the next couple of episodes that I'm doing with my podcast, I'm going to briefly discuss, the poverty and lack and scarcity mentalities, because those are some of the things that I feel, being, a Black woman, African American, however you're labeling yourself today. We've had so many that it's about the mentality, and our community has to change, our mentality of how we look at things. So don't get me wrong. I, like you, understand that there are systems in place that are designed to keep people of color, minorities behind. I totally get that. They keep certain classes behind. But you must ask, how much of the mentality and the reality is perpetuated by the individual? Again, yes, there are systems, but to continue to complain about the system, like I said earlier in the quote, that's wasted energy. And so if this were not true, then there wouldn't be so many rags to riches stories. So yes, there are people that look like you and I, or that look like me, because I don't know what you may look like, but people that look like me who have come from hard stories, single parent, growing up in, extreme poverty, growing up in the projects. Some have even been homeless and lived in cars and so on and so forth. But they've come up, they decided that that's not what they wanted. And yes, there was a system that they were a part of, but they decided they did not want to be a part of that anymore. So if this were true, there wouldn't be so many rag to riches stories, as I just said. So I have a couple of questions I want to ask you, and just think about this. So is it the fault of the system if a young girl continues to get pregnant by the wrong people and have children with many different fathers? Is that the fault of the system? Is it the fault of the system? Young people going out and they're spending $100+ for tennis shoes and handbags and, hair weave and all these other things that money is spent on that doesn't have any value, intrinsic value. Is it the fault of the system? Is it the fault of the system if our Black families, aren't speaking and leading and leaving legacy to those generations that are coming behind them? That they're not sitting down and talking to the young people about entrepreneurship, investments, and using their minds beyond just going to school and getting degrees. And a lot of times our families are just sitting and doing frivolous things that don't really amount to much of anything for the future. So is it the fault of the system that we're not taking responsibility and accountability for the things that we can control? And those are things that you can't control, because if that's the case, I get the whole system about, I get the whole thing about the system. But what are we going to do to flip that cart? What are we going to do? Complain about it is not going to change anything. And it's not. How many times you complained about something and how much has it changed? Even if you complain and a change came from it, that was just a result of that complaint. But how about making something where we use our voices to make things different? And so I just want to leave, and I always leave my listeners with a thought to ponder. So ponder this thought. If the time you put in for today, doing whatever, that's excluding your work hours, 9 to 5, I get it. We all have to work. If the time you put in for today were to reach a huge dividend for tomorrow could be the next day, it could be the day after, it could be future. If it was to yield, reap a huge dividend, what would you have yielded? So I'll give you an example. If I spend all day, listening to books or reading books that are leading to the things that I desire to do, that eventually it's gonna have a dividend, because now I have some knowledge, some tools that I can put forth to make things happen. And then the tomorrow that comes, the yield that comes could be, different events, training opportunities, creating content. That's because there's a dividend and I've yielded from that dividend. That's what you gain. Or if I'm spending countless hours throughout the week, watching, what I call junk TV. And I know everybody has a junk TV program. I have one. I have two, but they're spread out, so I don't get to watch them together and consecutive. But if there's this constant watching, reality shows and game shows, I don't even know if people still watch game shows, sports and whatever those things that draw you away from doing things for you, what will that actually yield? What will that actually yield? And so the conversations I'm attempting to have is just to get, people to think, just get you to think. And if we all think and change our perspectives about, moving our generation forward and not just jumping on when there's a cause. There's a difference between a cause and a mission. We have a habit of when something happens, we jump on that cause. But the mission is to start doing something about it now. There are states right now in 2021, we just finished an election and they're already preparing for election in 2024 to change how they vote in some of these states. But yet my people sitting back doing what they do, and they're just going to wait until the next cause instead of making it a mission now to pay attention and be prepared and get ready for whatever's to come, or be able to stand in the face and make the change that needs to be made that benefit all people, not just people that look like us, all people. So I hope that you found this episode enlightening. And as I stated, you can find many episodes, because I only pick a few to come to YouTube with. The podcast is the Life Diet 365 podcast. And so I hope you'll check it out. Again, this is your girl, Miss Straight Talk, no sugar added. And as you can see, this may have been a little sour, but it was definitely necessary. Take care. Bye-bye.